The diner was one of those old-fashioned spots, vinyl booths, flickering neon sign out front, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. It was well past midnight, and Ashley was nearing the end of her shift. The night had been uneventful, save for a few truckers and the usual locals who lingered over coffee refills they didn't really need. She stifled a yawn, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear as the bell above the door jingled. In walked a man in his late 40s, wearing a simple hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He looked tired, his movements deliberate but weary, like someone who had spent the entire day solving problems the rest of the world couldn't even fathom. "Take a seat anywhere," Ashley called out without much thought, wiping down the counter. The man nodded, choosing a booth in the corner. He didn't remove his cap, and he avoided eye contact, studying the laminated menu with a peculiar intensity. Ashley grabbed her notepad and walked over. "What can I get you tonight?" The man glanced up briefly, his face partially obscured by the shadow of his cap. "Just a burger and fries. And coffee. Black." His voice was calm but carried an undertone of authority, though Ashley chalked it up to fatigue. "Coming right up," she said, scribbling down the order. As she turned to leave, he added, almost as an afterthought, "Actually, make that decaf." She paused, arching a brow. "Rough day." The man gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Something like that." The diner was nearly empty, so Ashley had plenty of time to wonder about her mysterious customer as she refilled salt shakers and folded napkins. He didn't look like the usual crowd, too well-groomed to be a trucker, too casual to be a businessman passing through. She glanced at him again, noticing how he stared out the window, his expression a mix of exhaustion and deep thought. A few minutes later, Ashley brought the food to his table. "Here you go. Anything else?" He shook his head. "This is great, thanks." Ashley hesitated. Normally, she'd walk away, but something about him piqued her curiosity. "Not from around here, are you?" "No," he said simply, taking a sip of his coffee. "Traveling for work?" He smiled again, this time more noticeably. "You could say that." Ashley didn't press further. People passed through all the time, each with their own story. But as she walked back to the counter, she couldn't shake the feeling that she knew him from somewhere. The man finished his meal quickly, leaving cash on the table. As he stood to leave, Ashley noticed he'd accidentally left his phone. "Hey, wait," she called out, grabbing the phone and rushing to the door. He turned, his expression briefly alarmed before softening. "You forgot this," she said, handing it to him. "Thanks," he replied, taking it from her with a nod. And that's when it clicked. The way he held himself, the slight South African accent, the intensity in his eyes, it was him. You're Elon Musk," she blurted out before she could stop herself. His face didn't change, but the faintest flicker of amusement danced in his eyes. "I was wondering how long it would take." Ashley's jaw dropped. "What are you doing here?" "I mean, why here?" He shrugged. "Sometimes you need to get away from the noise. Clear your head. In a diner in the middle of nowhere." "Why not?" he said with a small grin. "Good burgers, by the way." Ashley was at a loss for words. She had a million questions swirling in her mind, but all she could manage was, "Thanks, I guess." Elon glanced at his watch. "Well, I should be going. Big day tomorrow." "Wait," Ashley said impulsively. "What's it like? Running everything? Being you?" He paused, considering her question. "It's like juggling chainsaws while standing on a moving train," he said finally. "Exhilarating, dangerous, and sometimes you wonder why you ever thought it was a good idea." Ashley chuckled. "That sounds intense." "It is," he admitted. "But every now and then, you find a quiet moment. Like this." And with that, he tipped his cap, pushed open the door, and disappeared into the night, leaving Ashley to wonder if the whole thing had been a dream. As the weeks passed, Ashley found herself replaying the encounter in her mind, especially when the news broke about Musk's latest venture, an ambitious plan to build a self-sustaining colony on Mars. The diner became a talking point in the town, though most of her regulars didn't believe her story. But one day, an envelope arrived in the mail, addressed to Ashley with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thanks for the burger. You're right, sometimes it's nice to just be human for a while. Elon." Attached was a business card with his personal contact information and a simple postscript. "If you're ever in Austin, look me up. I owe you a coffee." Ashley tucked the card away, smiling to herself. The man everyone thought they knew was far more complex than he appeared, and she had the story to prove it. Ashley kept the card in her wallet, pulling it out occasionally when the chaos of life got too loud. She'd stare at the neat handwriting, wondering if she'd ever work up the courage to actually reach out. It wasn't like Elon Musk would remember her, right? He probably had millions of things to think about, far more important than a waitress from a small-town diner. But the thought lingered. Months passed and life carried on as usual. The diner was as unremarkable as ever, but Ashley began noticing an uptick in curious strangers stopping by, tech enthusiasts, journalists. Even a couple of influencers looking to find the place where Musk once ate. Word had somehow leaked online about her encounter, and the diner was unofficially dubbed Musk's Midnight Spot. At first, Ashley found it amusing. But then the attention became overwhelming. People started asking intrusive questions, assuming she and Musk were somehow friends. The local news station even stopped by for an interview. "Do you think Elon Musk will come back?" the reporter had asked, thrusting a microphone in her face. Ashley had laughed nervously, brushing it off. "I don't think billionaires have the time to become regulars at diners." But privately, she wondered if she'd ever see him again. One particularly slow evening, Ashley was closing up the diner. The last customer had left an hour ago, and she was wiping down the counter when her phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown number popped up. "Still owe you that coffee. Free tomorrow." Ashley froze. Her heart raced as she stared at the message, reading it over and over again. Could it really be him? Before she could overthink it, she typed back, "I'm always free for coffee." The next day, Ashley found herself nervously waiting at a sleek, modern cafe in Austin, Texas. It was nothing like her small-town diner. The floors were polished, the air smelled of artisanal espresso, and every table seemed occupied by someone important, discussing startups or trading ideas for apps. She felt out of place in her jeans and sweater, clutching a to-go cup she hadn't even taken a sip from. Then she saw him. Elon walked in casually, dressed much the same as the first time they'd met, hoodie, jeans, and that ever-present baseball cap. This time, though, there was no mistaking who he was. A few heads turned, whispers rippling through the cafe, but he seemed unbothered. "Hey," he said, smiling as he approached. "Hi," Ashley replied, her voice shaky. "Glad you could make it," he said, taking a seat across from her. "I almost didn't believe it was you," she admitted. "I get that a lot," he said with a chuckle. Their conversation started awkwardly, but soon, Ashley felt at ease. Elon asked her about her life, her dreams, and what she thought of all the Musk mania surrounding her diner. She was surprised by how genuinely curious he seemed, like he truly cared about her answers. "So, how's it been?" he asked. "The diner, I mean. Has the attention been a good thing?" Ashley shrugged. "It's been weird. People assume I'm someone special just because you happen to stop by. But I'm just a waitress." Elon tilted his head thoughtfully. "You know, I don't think there's such a thing as just anything. Everyone's story is unique." Ashley smiled. "Coming from you, that's pretty inspiring." The conversation eventually shifted to his projects. Elon spoke about the challenges of running multiple companies, the pressure of public scrutiny, and his vision for the future. But what struck Ashley most was how human he seemed, how he admitted to doubts and fears that made him feel far more relatable than she'd expected. "You know," Elon said, finishing his coffee, "sometimes I think people like you get it better than I do. You live in the moment. You connect with people on a real level. I spend so much time in the future, I forget to appreciate now." "That's surprising," Ashley said. "I thought you thrived on the future." "I do," he admitted. "But every now and then, it's good to be reminded why it matters." As they parted ways, Elon handed her another envelope. "This time, don't wait so long to use it," he said with a wink. Inside was an invitation, a personal pass to SpaceX's next launch, complete with an all-access badge and accommodations. "Are you serious?" she asked, wide-eyed. "I don't do anything halfway," he said with a grin. And just like that, he was gone, leaving Ashley standing in the middle of the cafe with her head spinning. Weeks later, as she stood on a launch pad watching a rocket ascend into the heavens, Ashley couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. One late-night shift, one burger, and one forgotten phone had somehow led her to this moment. The sky lit up with fiery brilliance, and for the first time in years, Ashley felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: possibility. As Ashley stood on the observation deck, watching the rocket soar higher into the atmosphere, the sheer scale of the moment overwhelmed her. The roar of the engines faded into the background as her thoughts took over. She wasn't just watching a technological marvel, she was witnessing the result of one man's relentless drive to push boundaries. She glanced down at the badge hanging from her neck. All Access, SpaceX guest of Elon Musk. It still didn't feel real. Enjoying the view, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Ashley turned to find a young woman in a sleek SpaceX uniform. Her name tag read Rachel. "It's unbelievable," Ashley said, still staring at the rocket trail. Rachel smiled. "Not everyone gets an invitation like this. You must have made quite the impression." Ashley laughed nervously. "I served him a burger once. That's about it." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Well, whatever you did, it worked. He doesn't usually do this kind of thing." After the launch, Ashley was guided through the facility. The sheer scale of SpaceX was staggering, endless corridors filled with engineers, technicians, and some of the brightest minds in the world. She couldn't help but feel out of place, but the excitement of being there overshadowed her nerves. As the tour wrapped up, Rachel led her to a glass-walled conference room where Elon was waiting. He stood, smiling as she entered. "Welcome to the future," he said with a sweep of his hand. "Thanks for the invite," Ashley replied, trying to hide her nervousness. "I don't really know what I'm doing here, though." Elon gestured for her to sit. "You're here because I like to meet people who remind me of why I do this. You're grounded, real. It's refreshing." Ashley tilted her head. "Grounded? I'm a waitress." "Exactly," Elon said. "Most people I meet are so caught up in their own ambitions or trying to impress me that they forget how to just be human. You didn't." Their conversation stretched on for hours, touching on everything from SpaceX's Mars mission to the challenges of balancing ambition with personal fulfillment. But then Elon's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "There's another reason I invited you," he said, leaning forward. "I want your perspective." "My perspective?" Ashley echoed, confused. "You represent the people I'm trying to inspire," Elon explained. "The ones who don't live and breathe technology. The ones who might never visit Mars but still deserve to feel connected to the future. I want to know what you think, what excites you, what scares you. What do you think of all this?" Ashley hesitated, overwhelmed by the weight of the question. But she knew Elon wasn't looking for a polished answer. He wanted honesty. "It's amazing," she began. but also intimidating. People like me, we see all this, rockets, electric cars, AI, and it feels so far out of reach. Like it's not meant for us, just for the geniuses and billionaires of the world. Elon nodded, listening intently. That's exactly the problem I want to solve. Technology should be for everyone. As the evening wore on, Elon shared a vision he hadn't yet revealed to the public, a project designed to bridge the gap between ordinary people and cutting-edge innovation. It was ambitious, even by his standards. I want you to be part of it, he said suddenly. Ashley blinked. Me? Why? Because you get it, he said simply. You're not blinded by the hype or the jargon. You see things from a perspective I don't have. I'm just a waitress, she repeated, shaking her head. Elon smiled. For now. Over the following months, Ashley found herself drawn deeper into Elon's world. She wasn't just a spectator anymore, she was part of something bigger. She worked alongside marketing teams, helping them craft messages that resonated with everyday people. She traveled to events, speaking about her unlikely journey from small-town diner to the forefront of innovation. And as she stood on stage at a major SpaceX unveiling, addressing a crowd of thousands, she realized something profound. Sometimes, the most unexpected opportunities come from the simplest moments. But the story didn't end there. Ashley's life had changed forever, and the road ahead was uncharted. What other doors might open? What challenges would she face? Months turned into a year, and Ashley's transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. She'd gone from flipping burgers to being an unofficial ambassador for one of the most ambitious visionaries in the world. Her story became a media sensation. Interviews, documentaries, and even talk show appearances followed. Yet through it all, she stayed grounded, holding on to the humility that had first caught Elon's attention. But with visibility came scrutiny. The media began to question her role. Critics accused her of being a token story, suggesting that Elon was using her as a publicity stunt to humanize his projects. Articles with headlines like "The Waitress Turned SpaceX Mascot, Genuine or PR Genius" began to surface. One day, while preparing for a panel discussion at a tech conference, Ashley found Elon waiting for her backstage. "You've seen the headlines," he said bluntly. Ashley sighed. "Hard to miss them. Am I just a story to you?" Elon looked at her, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "No. But people will always try to tear down what they don't understand. You're not here to prove anything to them. You're here because you bring something real to the table." Ashley crossed her arms. "And what if I don't want to be the real one anymore? What if I want to contribute in a way that doesn't just rely on my backstory?" Elon nodded thoughtfully. "Then let's make that happen." The following months were a whirlwind of activity. Elon assigned Ashley to a project that would put her skills and insights to the test, leading an initiative to bring STEM education to underserved communities. It was a bold move, and one that gave Ashley the opportunity to truly shape something meaningful. She traveled to schools, worked with educators, and developed programs that demystified technology for young people who'd never dreamed of working in such fields. Slowly, she began to feel the weight of purpose settle on her shoulders, not as Elon's protege, but as a leader in her own right. One evening, as Ashley reviewed plans for a new STEM center, she received an unexpected email. Subject: "Let's talk over dinner." It was from Elon. That night, they met at a quiet restaurant far from the media's prying eyes. As they ate, Elon shared something he rarely discussed: his doubts. "I know I'm not perfect," he admitted. "Sometimes I push too hard, expect too much. But seeing people like you rise to the challenge, it reminds me why I keep doing this." Ashley smiled. "And here I thought you were just a heartless tech genius." "Only half true," Elon replied with a smirk. Their conversation shifted to the future of SpaceX, Tesla, and beyond. Elon hinted at projects even his closest team members hadn't heard of yet, concepts that sounded more like science fiction than reality. "I want you involved," he said. Ashley laughed. "You're not going to ask me to design a rocket, are you?" "No," Elon said. "But I am asking you to help me design something even more important, the future." As Ashley left the restaurant that night, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She wasn't just a media darling or a side story. She was part of something bigger, something that was still unfolding. And for the first time, she realized that her journey wasn't just about proving herself. It was about creating a legacy. Months later, Ashley stood on a stage in front of thousands at a SpaceX conference. The event wasn't just about rockets or Mars colonization, it was about the people driving the vision forward. She was the keynote speaker, a role she never imagined when she first served Elon that plate of food. "I'm not an engineer," she began, her voice steady but heartfelt. "I'm not a scientist. But I've learned that shaping the future isn't about what you know, it's about how willing you are to learn, to adapt, and to believe in something bigger than yourself." The audience erupted into applause, but she wasn't finished. "A year ago, I didn't think I had a place in this world. Today, I see that there's room for all of us in the future, if we are bold enough to claim it." Elon watched from the front row, his usual stoic demeanor softened by a faint smile. He knew she wasn't just talking about her journey, she was talking about everyone's ability to rise above expectations, to defy the odds. As the event wrapped up, Ashley was approached by dozens of attendees, students, entrepreneurs, and even scientists, who shared how her story inspired them. But what stood out most was a young girl who tugged at Ashley's sleeve. "Can I be like you someday?" the girl asked. Ashley knelt to her level and smiled. "You can be better. And I'll be here to help." That night, as Ashley reflected in her hotel room, she realized the full weight of her transformation. She wasn't just a part of Elon's story anymore. She was writing her own, a story of growth, resilience, and the power of taking a leap when life offers the unexpected. In the end, Ashley didn't just join the future. She helped shape it.